child will not sound like other children. The alien child learns kind words. If you have spent any time in a schoolroom, you know that kind words are also a countercultural thing. Children grow up on a diet of snark and cynicism and sarcasm. Snark, sarcasm, and cynicism, the three S's of tough speech. I'm kidding, I know cynicism starts with a C. I'm pretty sure it does. They see it on TV. They hear it from their friends. So guess where the last place should be that it comes up? Should be at home, right? This was a tough one for me. You can tell I have a fully orbed sense of humor. I grew up in a home where sarcasm was our love language. I married a man who is kind and soft-spoken, and in the early years of our marriage, it did not go well in that regard. And so the idea that we could raise children without those things was foreign to me. And he told me, he said, in our home, my mother made a rule that we were not allowed to tease each other. And I sat there and stared at him and I said, what did you talk about at the dinner table? He grew up with a more beautiful vision for family in that sense. And so I had to learn not to employ the methods that were comfortable to me. You know why? Because as your kid gets older, the speech that is coming out of them toward you is usually the speech that you have directed at them for all of the years until they got bold enough to dish it back. So if my children were going to use sarcasm, if they were going to use mockery or teasing, it had better have come from their peer group and not from me. They're going to know how to use kind words, and so we disarm sarcasm and teaching. Sarcasm is a form of verbal bullying. Sarcasm always has a victim. If you pay attention to the way that you use it, you will realize that someone else is always paying the bill for your humor when you employ it. So how terrible if we are to employ it in our relationships with our children who already are at a verbal disadvantage just by their developmental abilities. Sarcasm cannot be part of the vocabulary of the Christian home. Now, there are plenty of other ways to be funny. You can use irony, you can be self-deprecating. I can make fun of me all day long because I get the joke. But we have to be so careful, especially with children who are concrete and are learning and developing, that we use language that is accessible to them. So you train your children in kind words, and when other children are unkind to them, we sent our kids to school with this instruction. If someone is mean to you, look them in the eye and say, "That's not kind," and walk away. Because that goes over great in the locker room, right? But here's the thing. It's speaking the truth. It's keeping it from being personal. And it gives them a way to walk away from the situation without sinning with their own speech. They didn't always do it right. But we're not in the business of locking our children into always doing right things. We are trying to give them language. We're trying to give them a script so that over time they learn to employ it. Alien children use pure words. So when the swear words start coming home from school, what do? And I remember this so clearly. I remember Matt coming home from school and saying, "Mom, I learned the S word today." And you're like, "Okay. Honey, what is the S word? I know it, but why don't you just tell me what it is?" And what does he say? "Stupid." Oh, okay, all righty. Of course that's the S word. Comes home a few weeks later and says, "Mom, I learned the SH word." And you're like, "Come on." Okay, well, I know the SH word, and I'm thinking, I think I know the SH word. What is the SH word? And he says, "Shut up." Yeah, that's a bad one. Shut up is a bad word, honey. But over time, of course, he begins to bring home the real words, the ones that you're like, "Man, I really didn't want you to know that yet." And we decided that we would diffuse swearing by taking away the forbiddenness of it a little bit, right? So what we did is we would say, "Hey, you know what? There's not a word you can bring home that I won't know. So you bring it home, and we'll trot it out, and I'll tell you whether I knew it or not." And then we would talk about what it meant and why people use it the way that they do. And we would say it out loud a few times, and we'd laugh about it. And it totally took all of the bite out of it. It took all the mystery out of it. And it began doing something really important. It began setting up Jeff and me as the source of all knowledge, right? Because honestly, kids think we don't know anything. They think that what gets talked about at the lunch table is like this sacred space that their parents have no idea about, and you need to set yourself up as the expert on all things. And so I remember telling Matt, you have brought me many terrible words, but you have not brought me the mother of all swear words. And he's like, "What's the mother of all swear words?" And I said, "Well, I will tell you when you bring it home." he rose to the challenge. He brought me some words that were scorchers. I mean, I'm like, yep, I know that one too, and that's not it. And he got all the way to his sophomore year of high school before he finally brought it home. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So we diffuse the sort of the lure around those kinds of words by just taking their power away, by having the conversation around them. And we point them instead toward fruit of the Spirit speech, right? Speech that is loving, that is joyful, that is patient, that is kind. All of those things are the kinds of speech we try to cultivate in our children. And we teach them reconciling words. We teach them how to say, I'm sorry and I forgive you. And there's been a lot of discussion around that, like, is it okay to train a child in that language when they don't yet feel remorse? Anybody seen this one? You know, I'm sorry. No, you're really not. Yes, absolutely train them in the language of reconciliation, in the hope that the right motive will attach itself at the right time. You train them to say please and thank you before they're pleased or thankful. You train them to say ma'am or sir. You're giving them tools to be able to be good citizens and ultimately, we pray, good Christians. So give them words of reconciliation. Give them words of prayer. Model prayer for them in the home. Let them be children who, when they go into a hostile environment, know that even if they don't have the right words to say back to someone who is being unkind, they can direct their words heavenward.